through the city by the bay, and I look at the people we love. Diversity. It's nice to see you in bloom again. Find ourselves together, my friend. It's our season until the end. In California, California.
Hello, Lisa. Hello, Omar. Welcome to Cali Cocktail Friday night. Feelings Friday.
Walking through the city of trees, beam of color like falling leaves. Te amo, California. Te amo, California. Te amo, California. Te amo, California. Te amo, California.
Hello. Welcome. Sorry, let me try to stop this before the other one comes on. All right. So, how's everybody doing tonight? Tonight, we have an interesting topic that Melissa and I have been talking about and experienced many times. It is inherited family trauma. And I'm sure that after we get through this, that we will see that we all have inherited family trauma from, I know I do. So, and I'm willing to share it, open my heart to you. I love you. Welcome. Get a hold of your cocktail, whatever that may be, a drink. And we'd like to say thank you for coming here because it is one of those times where, it is can go deep, and we have some humor for you too. We have some artwork. I did some glitch art. I did some Virgen de Guadalupe here. I did a picture of a glitch art of the Virgen. I have Kuan Yin, and I have the glitch art in the back to keep you not sleeping. So we are going to go into it with Melissa, give you a little bit of a introduction. So I will introduce my co-host, Melissa. Plunky Chicken? Oh, Funky Chicken. Pano.
Every week it's different. Hey, how's it going? Hi.
Good.
Happy to see you, and I'm happy to be here with everyone that is joining us. Hi, guys. It's Friday.
What's
What
that?
are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?
Oh, okay. First, you're off for a little bit. It looked like you were lip syncing. It was awesome. Perfect.
I hope my face was frozen in like the most attractive pose, but I bet it was more like.
Oh, let's see who we have here. We have Lisa from Portland. Hola, Lisa.
Hi,
We have Omar Cha-Cha Whispers. Cha-Cha.
Cha-Cha, he just had a birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Omar.
We'll sing later on. We have Colleen Craig. Hello.
Hi.
We have Sakanya Torval, or also known as Piag. We have Lila Solazando. Rivera.
Hi, Lila.
Chris Jensen. Welcome. And whoever
else out there.
What's that?
Sorry, I had to put you on mute because I was trying to bring up the screen on the other tab in my computer, and I could tell I was about to start talking. Because I want to see the comments. I can never, but I guess you're going to bring them on the screen. So,
yeah.
Friday, I just ordered a bunch of masks from Lila. I'm super excited. They are on their way to me right now. I finally took the leap. So, I'm assuming she's still selling them. If anyone, I think too, just speaking to the big question mark of this pandemic, I think at first I was like, well, I'm just not leaving the house that much. I need like one or two, no big deal. It's okay if they're super inconvenient because I just have these like clunky tie ones. And now that it's continually apparent this could go on a long time, it's kind of nice to have some just nicer ones. Like the ones Lila makes have the elastic and you can put a filter in them. And I want to be able to like rotate and not use the same one every time. So.
Yes. And I think we're all going to need more masks now. So thank you, Republican Party and the president, for leading us into this little disaster. So I'm excited for you to get them, Lila said.
Yay, I'm excited too.
Omar said, thank you, friends.
Birthday, Omar. I've noticed that, anyway, I'm going to go off on an Omar tangent. I'm just happy to see him. Hi. And I'm happy to see all of you guys. I look forward to Friday. I like find that during the day, I'm like, oh, our friends are going to hang out, and yeah, it's cool. And I'm excited about our topic tonight. It was something I really geeked out on right when Tilly was born, which I know we're going to get into it later, but it's kind of fun to have someone else that's really into it now, and just to be able to talk about it as a group because it's fascinating.
Yes. And everybody, we want you, this is going to be a two-parter because we want you to, listen and try to figure some stuff out because, I am going to open my heart and my story to you, personal, and I will try to go, try not to filter myself. But I think that we all suffer from some sort of family inherited trauma, right? And I think that once we start looking into it, then we start digging more, and you have to dig more and dig more and dig more. So Melissa and I have been talking about this before, and I was telling her that I, come from a Thich Nhat Hanh Buddhist kind of way of understanding it. So we were talking about it, and there's a lot of stuff that I went through with my mom, and my mom passed away when I was 4 days old. So I always knew that we had a conversation before she left. I had conversations with her during the womb. I went to therapy too, and I went to, a little new agey therapy too. So I went through past life regression, all that stuff, in search of answers. So I did crystal work. I did shaman work. I did, all this stuff, Reiki and all this stuff, to get to a certain point. And so we were talking about it today, and she sent me a podcast, right? And what's his name again, Mark?
Mark Wolin, I think is how
Yeah.
you pronounce it. He's an author, and he wrote a book called It Didn't Start With You. And it's all about this field called epigenetics, which is like super scientific, fancy. We're not going to get into the science of it, but it's essentially the way that our genes can literally change based on experiences that happen in our lifetime. So it's not like the long-term way that we adapt as humans. It's like I go through something traumatic, the eggs in my body are affected. When I have a baby, she gets to the same age I was when that thing happened, and she starts to be afraid of water. And that's like just one example of how it can seem completely unrelated unless you're open to this formerly kind of woo-woo idea of like us down through your genes, but science is now backs it up, which I know, Ruben, you were talking about. It's really nice to see evidence for something you already know is true.
Yeah, and it's cool because it does justify a lot of things that I felt before, and it's things that you've seen before too. Where my dad was an alcoholic, right? Well, guess what? His grandfather was an alcoholic. I never met my grandparents, and probably before that there was some trauma and going in there too, and I got my DNA, and I'm proud to say that I'm 54% indigenous, right? But also, if you look at my DNA, that someone had to conquer somebody, right? I mean, my real name is probably not the name that I have, right? It's not Ravelis. It's probably some, some name that I can't pronounce. So, but there had to be some sort of conflict within that too, and it goes generation before generation before generation, before we can even figure that out. So, and today I was watching something. I said, God, Americans are just a lost civilization. Not because they're lost, but because they've, Italians had to give up their names, right? Everybody had to change their names, so they don't know who they are, right? If that makes sense to you, because like it just goes within all of us. I mean, it's incredible how much pain we come to this earth with, and like you said in the book, is it doesn't begin with you. So that's kind of the premise of the whole thing, right?
By the way, I couldn't find the book. I wanted to come and hold it up, but I think that even just like that title, It Didn't Start With You. If anybody watching has ever had something about themselves, whether it was a trait or something that they really struggled with, or just like a response they didn't understand. And I know that myself, I've had lots of those things where I'm like an understander. Like, where did this come from? And sometimes you don't have to understand it to heal it. You don't have to. But it can be something to give you some compassion, to understand why you do the things you do, and to be able to not even have to, but to take it off your plate completely. To realize that maybe the extreme response you have to, I mean, Ruben, I'm going to use your example. This isn't like a emotional response. Well, actually it is. You
Yeah.
talk about Aztec drumming that you've always just like, ugh, doesn't sit right with you.
Yeah.
And that's not like necessarily something that's like bothered you growing up. But I know that for me, something that I came up when I read this book, I did all the exercises and I really tried to like hone in was I've always had this intense fear of being paralyzed, like debilitating, terrified. And I don't have a story that I don't even know my ancestors really. So like many of us, we can't really know where these things come from. But to realize that this idea of being trapped or being harmed or not being safe or, you know, insert your thing here, that probably didn't start with you. It probably was someone in your history. And it isn't just some out there crazy idea. This is a field of science that has proven through multiple studies that we could talk about, but that this is measurable, that our genes really do change within our lifetimes, and then we pass those genes. And
Yeah, it's crazy that we pass it through our DNA. And like I said, later on, I'm going to show you my DNA just so you know how many different, uh, pieces of my puzzle I am, and I think that, I talked to Melissa today and we're talking about like being able to understand each other generational, right? With all the race stuff going on and but we need to get down to the core of how we all suffer and how these go down generation to generation. So it's not when people say, "Oh, get over it." You can't just get over it. It comes down from generation to generation that we don't even know. We're starting to know now, and so for me, having a conversation with somebody is also impinging on like, hey, I've changed a couple of people's perspectives on this just because we talked about the very basics of this. I mean, we haven't even dug deep into it. So I think that it is a good tool to have a conversation with people and with, because even within our families, we'll have someone say, well, why can't they just get over and talk to our dad? Because we all had different traumas and some of them are deeper. So you can't push someone to get over something, so, and that's only within one generation, that's not counting the other ones, right? So, and it is important for us to, to have compassion for the other side, right? To listen, and I was telling Melissa, I practice compassionate listening, which is basically be able to sit there and have the understanding that I'm just here to listen and heal somebody. And I don't mean like energy work, but I'm saying like listen to them and not move or try to give them my opinion, because sometimes that's all people need, and it takes a while. It's hard to do that too, but if you sit there and just listen to somebody, you'll be amazed how much it changes them, because you're not fighting with them. So a lot of it is, I know it's all interactive with each other, it all mixes in with each other. So, and I'm very glad that Melissa gave me that, the podcast to listen to. Yeah.
And we'll link it if you guys don't already have the link. So if you want to listen to, you can. But something else too, as you were talking, I was thinking about, and let me know if we're getting any comments, because like I said, I tried to open the screen.
Oh no, I'll put them up. I got Leela. That's crazy. It's true. Well, and Leela and I, yeah, go ahead.
Leila's giving us the real talk. It is crazy. I remember when I first heard about this, it was actually in a really boring class. I hated this class, but I was like, kind of like ears perked up, like, oh, this sounds interesting. Because I remember learning that the stress response of kids would change if their mothers had been stressed. But what I was going to say is, when we're talking about intergenerational trauma and race relations, I was in a conversation with someone this week that it felt very frustrating because I was trying to change her mind and I was attached to changing her mind. And it felt very like right, like I am right. If you would like to live the life you're supposed to live, you will think like me. And that felt very true. But when I tried to use this as evidence, like, hey, well, what about this? There's this whole science, intergenerational trauma, that shows entire populations that have been through horrific genocide, colonization, terrible circumstances, that this is carried in their DNA. So can that maybe give you a little bit of an idea that they might deserve some equity at this point, which is different than equality. It's equity. It's like more. And this person was like, well, my family has a lot of trauma. Like my mom was, and she started listing stuff that happened, right? Like my mom was sexually abused. My mom was beat up by my dad. So like I have trauma too. And I bring that story up because I think a lot of, and I don't think really anyone watching thinks like this, but I think it's easy to forget why people stay stuck in their worldview And I could hear that for her, it's like impossible to divorce that you could have a lot of pain in your bloodline, like I do. I'm a white person with trauma in my bloodline. And also, there are entire populations that have had an incredible amount of pain. And regardless of the individual like line of their DNA, the entire group is in kind of like a different category. So it's not comparative suffering like they have it worse, but sort of to recognize that they have both the individual trauma and the collective. So does that make sense, Ruben?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So I say a lot. I think that's my California accent.
It's because you want to make sure people are on the same page as you.
Yeah.
I say too.
So yes, and it is true. It's like so you have to find a common denominator with yourselves in order to start that conversation too, because people will deflect about how much trauma they have too, right? They'll say, well, and that's always also, which is good, but it's also a defense mechanism, right? It's kind of a distraction, but that just means they really want to talk about it too. So you got to find a way to kind of gap that bridge, and because everybody's going to blame everybody at this point. So you can't expect to get people into submission and then them have these because it's very rarely that you're gonna change someone's mind about certain things, right? It's hard. It will happen, but it's going to have to happen in an amount of time, not just like in one conversation or guess what,
not on my agenda necessarily.
and then let people think about it, and we'll go from there. Hello, Marlo.
Hi,
So
Marlo.
let's play a clip, and then everyone out there, if you have any questions or anything that you want to share with us, please put it in the comment line. And but right now I'll play the clip right now, and I think they may go in order or not order, but they're only a minute long. So
each of my grandparents was orphaned in some way. 3 of them lost their mothers when they were babies or small infants, and the 4th, she lost her dad when she was 1, and ultimately she loses her mother's attention. So this feeling of being broken from a mother's love, this has been passed forward in my family. In fact, I remember when I'm 5 or 6 years old, I'm a small kid, and my mom would leave the house. I would be so panicked. I would run into her room, I'd open her drawers, I'd pull her clothes to my face, her scarves, her nightgowns, and I'd breathe in her scent thinking that she was never coming back. And that was all that I had left. I told her about this 40 years later, and she said to me, "You did that too? I did the exact same thing when my mother left the house."
there you go.
I thought you were going to play another one.
No, I think maybe people can kind of understand like that because we don't and especially parents before us, and then people, especially it seems like the deeper we go into it, the less people share their feelings, right, or share themselves. Like I know that he ended up asking his mom. I remember one of his in this podcast, he said he finally asked that you got to live podcast, you'll see what happened with him, but he finally asked his mom, what is your trauma? What did you go through? And then she finally started divulging these things where he knew, is where a lot of his stress and a lot of his anxieties came from. And I think that's when people start, thinking about anxieties that they have and stresses that they have, and they may not know where they come from. It may be here, deeper inside. So, and I think that to me was fascinating on that.
Yeah. I think whenever too, we have another way to understand other people's pain. And that doesn't mean that we say, it's okay that you beat me up, or it's okay that you emotionally abuse me. Like, it's not okay, but I understand it. And I really, I'm of the school of thought that like all pain comes from pain. I don't think people, I don't know if this is scientifically true, but I don't think people are just bad by nature. I think often, whether it's inherited or whether it's childhood stuff, but whenever we can have kind of one more way to be compassionate and kind of take perspective of one another,
yeah,
I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, and like I said, that kind of trauma, I grew up, like I said, my mom passed away when I was born, right? So my dad was an asshole. He's good. We're good now. I mean, we talked, and he admitted his faults, right? But I grew up not knowing half of my side of my personality. Like all I grew up was like, I'm gonna be a fucking asshole, like my dad is. I'm gonna be this, this, and that because I had nothing, nobody to kind of counteract it. You know, there's the yin without the yang. You know, you're like one person flying, like a bird flying with one wing, right? And it would have been, I mean, it would have been great if I had known how my mom was, how, you know, how she grew up. I mean, it took me a while to get to Mexico to try to figure this stuff out. You know, I knew that I was indigenous. I knew it in my blood. I knew it in my heart, you know, and I went to go look for it. But I also know that, you know, when my dad, one of our punishments when we were kids, and I just talked about this with my brother a while ago, is that we had to sit on our knees and sit there for hours, right? And I always remember we talked, you know, recently. I'm like, dude, I would have rather just been hit and get it over with, right? And so, you know, we were kids and this happened and stuff like that. And, you know, like 25 years later, you know, I find out that my dad was, you know, was given to my aunt, like, which they do, you know, and he was going to be a priest, you know, and I was like, what the fuck? He's going to be a priest. Like, how did this go from him, you know, going to school to be a priest to what he became? But also I understood that those punishments were probably given to him during those times on your knees, you know what I mean? So that goes
Oh,
through
so
the
you
system.
kind of put the puzzle together a little bit,
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
saw.
And you have to. And I know that during this podcast, when you talked about how we are always like me, this is perfect for me because when I grew up, I'm like, I want to be a good person. That's all I care about. I didn't go to about school, anything. I go, I'm going to be a good person. Well, guess what happened? I ended up being like him, right? Because we're trying to be like someone we're not. And then we end up being like the father that was, you know what I mean? Like, so I drank and I did drugs and, you know, crank, everything else. I didn't do heroin, which probably good for me, but but I did a lot of
Still
stuff. I
good.
mean, yeah. So, you know, and I was, you know, trying to find myself and lose myself all at the same time. But and in the podcast, we talked about the more you try to fight that, the more you become that person you don't want to be. You know what I mean? So I had to go through that whole transition of that too. And at that time, you know, I played music. I think art's always been my savior because I always did something with art, whether it's playing in a band or, you know, nowadays it's like it becomes more of a therapeutical thing now. Now I know that when I'm doing it, it's a whole different feeling now, right? But back then it was more of, you know, I always knew that if I didn't do it, I would go crazy mentally. You know, if I didn't do art, I would go crazy. You know, it's just because, but it became something of an escape, but now it's more of a healing process. So I think that a lot of this, you know, if you can survive it, you come up with beautiful tools, right? So it is a rough thing to, you know, to talk. I mean, I would love maybe one day talk to my dad, but I don't know if that's going to happen. To say what happened to you, right? And we talked about the Buddhist one about, you know, imagining your father being a 5-year-old kid and, you know, and all the innocence that they had to go through, all the, you know, and what they had to go through at that time probably did the same thing to me, right?
When you imagine your dad being a kid, because yeah, Ruben's referring to this exercise that I think we're going to share with you through like a clip, but it invites you to imagine your abuser often, maybe this person you don't have a good relationship with, as a very fragile, impressionable, innocent, young person, which they once were. So Ruben, when you did that, like what did something shift for you?
No, well, see, the funny part is that I had my mom, so when we talk about like having communication, you know, when I was in the womb, me and my mom were talking, right? And one of us was going to survive, you know, and one of us was going to come onto the world. And you're a mom, you know, I know that moms would give their lives for their children, right? So I believe that my mom just gave me her energy so I can move on to the next plane, right? So fortunately for me, my aunt, who's my mama Concha, came and rescued me after 4 days. So we went through a lot of stuff. I mean, my dad was, you know, just crazy, psychologically, you know, just stuff. I mean, it'd go on for days. But what happened was that I have no idea how she forgave him. I have no idea how she loved him. I was his little brother, and a lot of family was not happy with her because he really did put us through some stuff. And I was telling Melissa the other day, you know, there was times when I was a kid with her, and my dad would, you know, she lived in LA La Puente.
This is
And
your adopted mom.
yeah. So she
Okay.
would, you know, she'd call the phone drunk and say, I want Ruben home. I want him home right away in the next plane. You know, so we'd cry for hours and hours and hours. It was going for days every time I was there, almost every day. And I remember the taste of tears, right? The taste of tears because I was choking on them all the time. And so now when I, you know, if there's some sort, you know, I get misty with movies or even commercials, you know, but I can feel it and I can taste that taste, right? So it goes on forever, you know, but now it doesn't have that much energy on me. I can feel it and I can remember it. Actually, it makes me happy to remember it because it reminds me of my mom. So she was always telling me to forgive my father. Like, you got to forgive him. I was like, no, you know. So finally I did. You know, I said, you know what? I will, and also my brother was key. I said, you know what? I'm gonna write a letter, and if he reads this, and I'm gonna write everything I think about him, womanizer, all this shit. You know, like if he wants to talk to me after that, then we'll talk. So basically, I took this letter, and that's what I love about writing. You know, you could, and so it's all the energy all the negative energy that I ever had against him, and I gave it to him, and he read it. My sister read it to him because it was in English, and he agreed to talk to me after that. So basically, I had nothing. Basically, all the energy that was there, I was like, I don't have it anymore. Like someone, I took it away from myself, right? So I couldn't be mad anymore because I wasn't going to tell him off or anything like that. So little by little, we started to, you know, for some reason, it gave me respect for him that he would come up and own what he did, you know. And so little by little, we got better now, you know. So now it's good. I mean, I can't forget what he did, but I can forgive him. And so that's how I was able to forgive him, and then go back after this with the you know, the Thich Nhat Hanh stuff about, you know, seeing my dad as a kid. You know, I saw him naked, you know, with the diaper on, scared, right? I saw him in a dark room, and just scared. And I was just like, okay, well, that's how I was. So I was able to put that on to that too. So, but I think that we all have, like, you know, our parents, you know, I don't even know what happened to them. Like, I know a lot of people out there have you know, situations like that too, where their parents were, you know, like, I think a lot of people in my neighborhood are like that. You know, when you thought everybody has a happy family, right? That was my whole thing. I'm like, oh my God, my family, you know, I've learned to block everything off. And I thought everybody had a happy family. And then I realized no one did. I mean, you know, like happy, but there was a lot of people with some really messed up families.
Yeah.
And I wish we would all known, right? Because then we could all talk together. So yeah, that's the long of it.
Yeah. So what do you think if you had gone to your dad and he hadn't been remorseful and he hadn't met you with, like,
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm gonna, because this.
hey,
And this
cuz, is that your cousin?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were saying, hey, cuz, I feel your dad and mine, same shit. I don't know if I can read it in the same. Yeah. So it sounds like is it Jaime?
Yes. Jaime.
Knows what you're.
He's my cousin from, yeah. So I think that, like I said, you know, we come from, you know, I'm a first gen. I was born here, the first one in my family born here. Everybody else was born in Mexico. And, you know, and I'm sure this applies to everybody. It doesn't, you know, just because it's a different geology, or, you know, I mean, different location, we all, you know, go through some stuff, and we realize that some of the stuff really fucked us up during growing up. And I know a lot of people have, you know. So and you know, and Jaime is like, you know, I think I barely met my uncle a couple of times, and he, you know, but I'd never really met that many people especially in my mom's side. My dad's side, I met some people, you know, but yeah. So
I remember when I had you on my podcast, I got a lot of comments about your episode specifically. And I'm even just thinking about this makes me want to tear up, but it was a very powerful moment. You talked about being a little boy in this very chaotic, toxic environment, you know, pulled between all these adult emotions. And I remember you saying you would just lie in your bed or wherever you were and stare up at this window and just pray for someone to come save you. Like, someone take me out of here. And as a mother, that just gets me, because it's like, I want every child in that situation to have that rescue, I guess you could say. But rather than get into like a bundle of it should never be like that, I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is that the shitty and difficult and like all of the most kind of dark parts of life that all of us face in different forms, also is the reason that you're a creator. It's also the reason that you are, a student of Thich Nhat Hanh and these philosophies that are actually really incredible. And so I guess I'm just calling in, like, it sucks that that little kid even needed someone to come rescue him. And look, you're sitting here and you're what do I call you? Like the energy alchemist, because you're like, I'm going to transmit energy through my art. And it's just, I guess I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
all of it. It's all a part of the human experience. Yeah.
And then Colleen, thank you for sharing. I can relate very closely to your story. And that's what I would love to have people on here to share their story, because like I said, that's what we want to do. We want to be that one candle so you can share it to the next person, right? You can, because we all have this kind of trauma and this kind of, and it is trauma, and I think that, I want to thank you because you've helped me be a little bit more articulate on stuff like this, because the other time I'm like, yeah, man, the energy here is awesome, man. And then, the energy of a kid, I was like, and I remember in that story, one of my cousins was like, it's a Christian, and he goes, I heard that you questioned God. I'm like, yeah, I was a kid. I was like, I said, in the same story, I was looking, I was asking for God's help. I was like, somebody help me. And no one came. So I decided to go take another path. I'm like, okay, well, if no one's going to save me, if someone's going to save a kid, then what is the point, right? So I had to go deep in myself and become an adult way before I wanted to, use those survival tools that, you carry around, and they're destructive after a while, right? They're good when you're trying to get out of a situation. They're great, but once you carry them through your adult life, they're very destructive tools. They're not any good anymore. You shut people off, every 2 years I would like shut people off because I knew that I was going to be abandoned after those 2 years, right? Or something was going to happen. So you see it, so, and I'm sure, I wish Colleen was on here just so I could see, like I said, we can hear what was going on.
I feel like Colleen should be a guest of ours. If you're watching, Colleen, you should be a guest of ours.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring up something that you just said and just remind us all that though it can seem like we are tarrying with the past and going backward, and I don't think anyone watching is like, why are you talking about childhood? But sometimes it can be very like, why are we doing that? And it's because, as you said, this stuff has papered the walls of our psyche, and it shows up in the way we disappear in relationships. It shows up in our anxiety over, trying to control everything. It shows up in our fears, like the unexplained ones when we're talking about the generational stuff, or even just, I know what it's like to be left. I don't want to be left again. And it's not that conscious. That's part of what I do as a coach, is like help people to bring, like, what's the story here? And just like, okay, this is the current story. This isn't in the past. And something I love about the audio you shared is that, is that we all have like an inner 5-year-old, like all the time, traveling around with us, protecting us, saying, oh, don't trust that person. Oh, worry about this thing, because remember when you got hurt? And how compassionate are we with little kids? Because it's like, oh, that's why I'm like that. That's why you're like that.
Yeah. Okay. And think about men, right? Men. I mean, this is why we're messed up. You know what I mean? We really are. And I mean that in the most loving way.
Not all men, Ruben. You're a good man.
No. I fucked up a lot. You know what I mean? I will admit to my fuck ups in my life, Luckily for me, people saw me as a good person, I think. But you know what I mean? Like, there is a lot of stuff that men have to go through because they're taught not to feel, right? Man up, or, don't cry, or, I mean, like, let them cry. Let them feel what they need to feel, because it's going to bottle up and it's going to explode at one time, right? It is going to explode. The more you put down, the more you're going to blow up, right? Let it, and it's just basic, science that, so it's difficult for men, and I say it's difficult for me too, and everybody, women and everybody, because women have a different approach, right? Or a different feeling, and so I can speak for a man, and I speak for a woman because, I feel like my mom's energy came into me too. So, and that is something that, goes more esoteric about stuff too. But everybody has, these. I love your cat, by the way.
I know, he just
Yes.
makes a
So
cameo.
let's go to the next video too, and real quick. And if they're only 1 minute, so we'll bring
Yeah.
them up, and so we can answer them, and then we'll hopefully get some people in here to share themselves with us, because it would be nice. So let
Yeah,
me
you
pull this
guys
up.
talk to us. Tell us what's coming up for you.
Yeah. So before that, yeah, that means everybody. Yes, everybody. Leela's Spanglish, by the way.
I love it.
And Leela, that because of, because we're immigrants too. So our families had some fucked up shit growing up from white people and racism against us, and so, and it's still going, so it's still going on now. Like the kids at the border, no one has any empathy for that. There's a lot of stuff that keeps going on. It keeps going on. And, at some point we have to break the cycle, because I really do think everybody should get their DNA test done, because then you'll see
Why?
where you're from, so, and without further notice, further ado, right?
Either one works.
Okay, here you go.
When a trauma occurs, it changes us. Literally, it causes a chemical reaction in our DNA. And this can change the way our genes function, sometimes for generations. So when we go to have kids, our kids aren't born with a clean hard drive. There's an operating system that's already in place, an operating system that contains the fallout from our traumas, sometimes our parents' traumas, sometimes even our grandparents', maybe even our great-grandparents' traumas. And our kids can be born with fears and feelings that don't always belong to them. That's why I wrote this book, so we can make these links and we can break this cycle.
Right?
Yeah. I forgot. I actually wrote a poem on this. I was like, oh, I should go find this. When Tilly was born, I started thinking so much about ancestry, because I don't have parents, so I don't have grandparents. And I was just like, when you pass your genes to someone, I think I immediately felt very curious and also very responsible. Like, what am I passing on? And so I got my DNA done. I started tracing my family tree, and I started to read books like this and really think a lot about what's her inheritance. And that, like anything, can be looked at two ways. Like it's not all bad. Like we have to also remember, just like we can inherit these traumas, we're also passing a lot of beauty on. We don't talk about that as much because we don't have to treat that as like something that needs to get better. But I bring it up not to reassure myself, but to reassure everyone watching that it's not all bad. Like we're passing on good stuff too. But I remember that just thinking, specifically having a daughter, I thought about the mother links in my family. And yeah, for me, like I had a great relationship with my mom. My dad was a drug addict and he left right when I was born. So similarly, we had that kind of break in the household. But for my mom, it turned into this almost suffocating kind of love on me. Like I was everything, and I needed to carry the family happiness almost. And thank God I was going to be okay, because nobody else was. And as long as Melissa is beautiful and Melissa is smart, Melissa will do good things. I had a lot of all this pressure, and I became a drug addict that like didn't do what I was supposed to do. And I'm not saying like this is directly the result of that, but a lot of my healing when I started to do this was recognizing that we can, like I love my mom, my dead mother, so much that it is really hard for me to have inner conversations that are anything other than loving, because I miss her and she was so wonderful. And even if she messed up, it's like she meant so well.
Yeah.
But those are necessary too. I guess I'm bringing mine up to say that even when you had a parent who was loving and did everything that they could, and this is kind of like the reality as parents, is like, we're going to fuck up too. Like there's going to be stuff that Tilly can look at me and say, mom, whatever. I'm not worried about that in this moment. But a lot of my work in the ancestral kind of peacemaking was forgiving my mother who also had a very terrible childhood and also didn't learn how to hold her own love. She had to look to other people for it, who also didn't realize that her value lay in herself. So she had to place her value elsewhere, like on her kids, go perform, go make sure that my life has meaning by making yours meaningful. That's kind of like the weight that I carried.
Yeah.
So I bring that up because I think sometimes, we talked about trauma and I don't want to like overuse that word, but it can look very different than you might think. It can be situations that seem very like loving on the outside, but we're actually really toxic in some ways and do need attention and do need healing. And yeah.
What's funny is
So
I was thinking about trauma, the word trauma. I'm like, yes, it is kind of scary. You know what I mean? Like the word itself. Yeah, and I was thinking, yeah, that is, but it is what it is. But it's like I think I can empathize with you about not having grandparents. I never met my grandparents. I never met any of my grandparents. I don't know anything about I don't know anything about anybody really, So and I know how much you loved your mom. And so I it all rings true in a sense to me too about what you're talking about. Because sometimes we feel lost, right? I felt lost. I don't know who I was. I mean, I know a little better now, but it's going to take a while, especially when you don't have those paths or those things to look back on to find out.
I think too, when you were talking about art, I mean, getting lost, finding art, doing the different modalities you've done, what do you think you were or are looking for?
I don't think that. Well, I think I found it. I think that. I'm still looking for myself, so it's going to be a lifelong process. Which I think getting older, that's the beautiful part about it, is that you find a sense of peace. And I found a sense of peace I didn't have before. So that was good. When people say, "Oh, like I know some of my friends will make fun of me, like, oh, look, you're old." I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I survived, and I'm still alive. No one's guaranteed. I go, I was like, you're not guaranteed to live for for however long you live. So, yeah, and so I'm still looking for my peace, and I really am. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of people who are still looking for their peace, and people that are. That's why I say, like, I'm fascinated by this thing is that it maybe it isn't our trauma to carry, maybe it isn't our anxiety to carry, maybe it isn't. The more I look at this field in a scientific way, too, is that there is a lot of stuff that maybe if I would have known earlier, I could have dealt with it, and knowing that it wasn't mine. So, and Chris says it's a wonderful book for men called Iron John. It's old but good. So,
Hey, Chris, I love your podcast. I meant to, if he was going to watch, I wanted to say I listened to the one with Ruben. It was awesome. Everyone check out Chris's podcast. You should link it in the comments if you want us to direct people there. And Raquella said, same here. Never knew my grandparents. Hi, Raquella. Yeah. And also too, to clear my story up, I did know all but one of my grandparents. So I'm not in the same camp. They've been gone for a long time, but
yeah,
I recognize how that's different.
But we never really got their stories, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so mad at myself. I remember when I was 16, I did a paper in school where I sat down with my mom's dad. And I think the topic was like, ask your grandparent about their life. And I remember sitting at their table, asking him about his life and writing the paper, but I didn't keep it. And I don't remember anything. And what's interesting, like, is as we talk about this, as we talk about what we're looking for, right? And I'd be interested, anyone watching, what do you think you're searching for? Like, in whatever ways you're searching. But for one, you're right, Ruben, like it's a continual process of whether it's getting to know ourselves or trying to find peace. And gosh, I felt like I had a really good point, and I can keep talking all day because I can just do that. But I feel like I lost my point a little bit. I think that ultimately what I want to say is that I think all of this is extra and not ours. I guess that's it. I don't think trauma, which by the way, let's define trauma really fast because I think a lot of people don't know. I love this definition. Trauma is anything that shatters your worldview. So if you go through the world thinking one thing and then something happens and it all changes, that can be trauma. And a lot of people think it's just things like car accidents or war or, really big things. But I love the example given in the show. It can be something like if you believe the world is a trustworthy place and you can trust people, and then your best friend steals from you, that's trauma. If you believe, insert something that just completely shattered the way you looked at the world. But I bring that up because on like a very like kind of esoteric level, I think we're love. I think we are peace. I think all of this stuff is extra that, who knows why we come here to do the things we do, but it's like, I don't think any of it is ours. And so to me, I guess not excuse, when I found this like area of study, I felt this great relief. And I think we talked about this, Ruben. For me, even if tomorrow someone says, hey, guess what? Epigenetics was a total lie. It actually doesn't exist, but we wanted to make people think that like they could inherit stuff. For me, it wouldn't, I don't know what my mind would do then. But for me, it just gave me the ability to be like, oh, maybe it's not my stuff that I feel worthless for no reason a lot, or really terrified of driving. That became a big thing for me. Or, insert this thing that you were like, I can set this down. This is not mine. I think anything we find that gives us permission to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to excuse like drugs or alcohol because those are fine. You can do those, but I don't think those necessarily like the stairway to the mountaintop.
Let me,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Let me answer this question real quick because it's a little bit.
Okay.
You want to read it for me?
I saw Chris's comment for a second. Ruben. Oh, so Jaime said, Ruben, I raised 4 children from day one. I loved them, never abused them in any way, and they all hate me. Why? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Well, I think I mean, I think that maybe. Sorry, I'm gonna leave that up there. I don't know why, but I think that I do know that they will come back. I do think that sometimes when that happens, and who knows why? Who knows? Like we talked about the trauma that goes from generation to generation. This might be, and this may be something beyond the point of us looking at. So I'd love to see what our grandparents, it would be him and our grandparents, put our own parents through, and to see from what genes go past to the other genes, and the trauma that goes to there. But I know Jaime, that they'll come back to you. They will. You just got to hold on, because I hated my dad. I really, really did. And I know that I had reasons to, and I use hate because it was, truly a energy, that I had to work out. But I do believe that will come back to you. I think that sometimes you have to let people, I don't know why they hate you. I don't know the reason, but that they will come back when they start learning and they start feeling their DNA coming back too. So I will wish you and send you some good energy for them to come back too. So, and I'm really sorry about that too.
I think that's a really tough one. And he was directing that question at you. So I'm actually going to leave that and just say that, I can imagine that's really hard. I do want to talk about for a second. Most of you guys know that I am a former drug addict. I'm sober. I've been sober for 8 years, and I went to rehab. And in rehab, there were lots of different kinds of women, but there were quite a few who had lost their children to CPS. And it was really hard to watch, because I remember one woman while she was there, I won't even go into that story. Either way, some of them never got their kids back. And I don't know their stories well enough to say that they stayed sober and they did everything right and they still didn't get their kids back. I don't know that that was the case or that it wasn't. I just know that from what I could see, it was just really sad and really messed up, because you could see it from both ways, right? From the children's perspective. And by the way, this is completely apart from the last comment. Now I'm thinking more of your childhood, Ruben, and the children's perspective, like perhaps, there was neglect, there's drug abuse, like there's reasons they were taken. And from the mother's perspective, she's sober now. She loves them, the only mother there is. And I think the paradox that both can be true. I think I am living in that often, which is that not being able to understand and going forth anyway. And that's not me. That's not my story. But sometimes, I guess I'm saying, sometimes like the kids don't come back. And I'm not saying that like these won't, but or with you, Ruben, like your dad was, it sounds like very kind of humble, at least for a moment, about you guys' history. sometimes people aren't. And a huge part of recovery, which being sober, we're all about like, when you make amends, you let it go. Like, people do not forgive you a lot, or a lot of people never say they're sorry to you either. And I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it feels kind of pertinent to the healing that often we feel depends on someone else's actions. And it can't. It can coalesce with them, coincide with them, but the healing is always here because people do what people do. Like, my mom's dead, my dad's dead. Stuff that comes up for me, I don't get to talk to them about that. But I'm going to heal. And I still, I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So we're going to take a deep breath now, or exhale. Is it exhale or inhale?
You have to inhale before you
We're
exhale.
going to cleanse the palate with the song, and we'll come back. And Ashley has a really good question for you, and Ashley's statement and a question. So we'll come back to that right after this. We'll have a, sit back and have a drink, your soda, your, what is it, decaf coffee?
Diet
Mine,
decaf, just decaf coffee. Which, by the way, Michael made this for me, and I think he thinks I only drink creamer because it's like 90% creamer. I'm like,
that's my favorite kind of coffee.
So I might run and actually make myself a new one while we're listening to this song. I'm going to do that.
Really? It's a 3-minute song. You better come back quick.
Are you scared? Are you scared?
It's going to be a sensitive song.
I'll be right back.
Do you miss me at all? Do you think about the things we used to do? No, you couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Do you miss me at all? Do you think about the things we used to do? No, you couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me?
Can you feel me?
Can you feel me? Can you feel me?
So Ansley has a question or a statement.
Ashley said, do you want me to read it right now?
That got quick.
Oh, I thought you were going to kind of like
I wasn't going to.
fade out. All right.
Is that Samaya?
I've spent a lot of time trying to understand and empathize with the trauma that my mother and grandmother experienced, and inevitably I have also struggled with. I have tried to break that cycle.
Sorry.
And create my own existence. it is hard to think that my daughter will also feel that trauma, but hopefully we learn from it. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think both can be true. I think that we can both break cycles, and because I know you, and because I know you, Robin,
Everybody knows Robin.
I think when you're intentionally examining your own stuff and trying to excavate it and not spray it onto the people around you, whether you have kids or not, because you don't need kids to be the cycle breaker. And then also I understand, Ash, like having kids, it's of course like you want to you want to kind of pad their existence, right? And give them the best chance. I remember when I was pregnant, I had a lot of mental health stuff going on and stress in the pregnancy, and I already knew a lot of this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally imprinting my fetus with stress, cortisol. Ah! But I also think there's a part of me that is like, you know what? I am not that powerful. And by that, I mean, it is not all about me. My kid is here on a journey doing something kind of like you, Ruben. Like this is getting a little bit into the like God realm, which I'm just going to go there because I do believe in there being some kind of like something that is bigger and more, has more perspective than I do. And the reason I'm going into that is, gosh, your comments distract me so much. I like can't look at the screen.
Sorry.
The reason I'm going into that is that I think that we can both take responsibility and try and heal our stuff, and also let go a little bit. And this is for myself as well. Like, let go, Melissa. It is not up to me to control what kind of emotional life my daughter has. And by that I mean, like, she's on her own journey, and this is something I actually is one of my affirmations every day. I have some that I listen to, and one of them is, I know Tilly is on her own journey. I know she has a God watching out for her. I know I don't have to figure it all out, because when it comes to genetic imprints, I don't know how to make sure that doesn't fuck her up. It probably will, but maybe she's supposed to. Like, maybe that's part of the stuff she's here to learn is.
Yeah, but I think now that we have tools to work on that. So, now that we know, and I think, Ash, you should talk to Melissa and read that book that she has. And I think that is a good start for you, because especially if you're worried about it, I think that, it is. It's a really interesting book, and it's a really interesting topic. And I think that's what you're talking about. So, I think that it'll be something that you will be able to, calm your feelings down about it too.
It also sounds like, just from the comments, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm portraying what I read of hers right. It Ashley, you're doing it. Like, you're doing that work. So I'm just reiterating. It's not like I do think you should read the book because it's super interesting, but I think that both are true. Once again, the paradox of you're doing a lot to heal your trauma, and it's also it's a lot of responsibility being a parent.
So let me see. Will you read that? No.
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a better reader.
Proud of you, cuz I feel your pain. I met your mom when I was a young kid. She was a wonderful, kind lady. You should be proud to be her son.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. Thank you, because I've never met her before. I never. Yeah, I mean, I've
Wait, so we're talking about your birth mother?
Yes. Yeah. So he would have met her before too. So they're all from the same town, or their parents were too. So yeah,
that's a really neat. That's an incredible comment to get then, just because.
Thank you, cuz.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, it's good because like everything I've learned from my mom about my mom was great. So it was great to, know that energy lived inside of me. Like I said, everything that becomes material or becomes physical, then I understand it even more now. So, but thank you. And let's go to the other video, right? Because they're 1 minute long. And sorry, I'm a little slow.
That's okay. We're used to it.
We need a producer. I need a producer. Okay.
You're doing it all.
Here we go.
There are definitely telltale signs. We can have a fear or an anxiety that strikes suddenly when we reach a certain age or hit a certain milestone in our life. For example, we get married and all of a sudden something happens, or we have a child, or we move to a new place, or we get rejected by our love. I once worked with a woman who was consumed with anxiety as soon as she became a new mother. Using the questions I outline in my book, we found out that she had a terrible fear of harming her new baby. So I asked her if anyone in the family had ever harmed their baby, and she said, no. And she said, oh my God, my grandmother, when she was a young woman, started a fire and her newborn died. And in that moment, she made the link that she was carrying her grandmother's feeling, and we could take the steps to bring the healing that was needed so she could be a much calmer mother.
So I
So
think that's what
anyone
kind of,
watching, yeah, has that
yeah.
ever happened to you? Have you ever had like a sudden onset of a fear or even just something you could never explain? Raquel said, you're blessed, you're both so amazing and showing love and light to those around you. Right back
Thank
at you.
you. Yeah.
Thank
And like I
you.
said, this is going to be a 2-part series. So you can go back and Melissa put the link in the, about that. We can also put the link for the Thich Nhat Hanh one, which is meditative and, a different a different style. But they both work good together. Sorry. I think I just burped on the mic.
Oh, I know you did.
That's my dainty side. Sorry.
Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Excuse me. Yes. So you can go both ways. And like I said, I think you'll understand more if you go through this whole thing, and you can see things that you'd probably never thought you saw, and maybe understand some anxieties that you have that you never realize how they got them, or how they come, or why. I don't know why we're afraid of certain things, but I started to realize, oh well, maybe one thing. Here's one thing, real quick, in science. So I was always, I can't sleep, blah, blah, blah. For my whole life, I couldn't sleep. Well, there's one reason why, but 2 reasons why. But I realized they just had a scientific study that people who stay up late had to stay up late for generations, because they were the ones that were watching out for the tribes, right, when we were first existence. So little things like that kind of rest you assured that it took the anxiety away of me not sleeping, because those do come down to you. Those I'm going to go to my DNA real quick, if that's okay. I'm going to
Wait,
show
I
you.
want to
Oh
stop
yeah,
you
yeah.
really
Go ahead.
fast.
Stop.
I just want to point out, I just heard something important that I think all of this comes back to, because when you were talking about finding out that it's okay that you stay up late, I think what all of this points back to is there's nothing wrong with us.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like if you have anxiety, there's nothing wrong with you. If you became deathly afraid of water, there's nothing wrong with you. If you don't sleep and everyone's been like, why are you such a loser? Because you sleep in, you stay up too late. There's nothing wrong with you. So I just want to, like, that to
Yeah.
me is
Yeah.
a huge gem from this, is like, there's nothing wrong with any of us.
Yeah. And and it actually took away the anxiety of me trying to put myself to sleep. But there is another physical way why I don't sleep, because when I was a kid, I stayed with my mama Concha. I only stayed there for the summertime when I got older, because my dad he ripped me away from her, right? So I was trying to sleep and I would never sleep, because this is where I think I learned about time, and I learned how to manipulate time. But I wouldn't go to sleep because I knew that if I did, the day would come closer that I had to leave her. So I would stay up as long as I could when I was a kid and watch these weird TV shows that were, and so I think that kind of stuck with me too. So there's a lot of different things. And plus, maybe I was a protector at night. I'm a night owl, right? And there's a reason for that scientifically. So that helps me not worry about I can't sleep or I'm up late now. I've always been up late, but it brings me some solace that it's scientifically also proven that, you know what I mean? Like it goes in your DNA. And the thing is, like, if they can project that from that long ago, think about the trauma that goes through just generations, right? So.
Oh yeah. Just to speak to the science really fast, I think it's been proven it can carry over 3 generations for sure, and most likely something like 17 generations, which is incredible. So think about 17 generations of your family. How much has happened? That's all. Your issues are in your tissues. That's all in your body. So the speaker that we keep showing, Raquel, is named Mark Wolin, and we're going to link to his book. It Didn't Start With You. Trying to think of how we should do that, Ruben, because the comments can get lost on these for people. but we'll figure out a way if you want to follow up with him. And he's actually on, this is a whole field of study. So there's lots of different people who talk about this. I've actually stumbled upon a really incredible course about the racial intergenerational trauma that is being talked about right now. It's put on by, I forgot who it is, but he talks about the white and black body and how they both carry trauma. And for me, it was like a wake-up call to realize some of it can be trauma that our ancestors inflicted, which actually is talked about in this podcast that we keep talking about, that it's not just what happened to our people, it's also what they did. And that is another, like, it's not something to carry like a weight, like, oh, you need to feel guilty. It's like, oh, all of it to me just points back to there's nothing wrong with you. This is genetic, this is systemic, this is cultural. Just speaking to like that conversation. But anyway, I know you want to bring up your DNA. I would love to see it. So if you are still into that, have to log out. Thanks for this. Hopefully it's recorded for viewing later. It is, right? Like you can always watch it.
It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on my profile. So, and also we'll be going part 2 on this, and hopefully we'll have people, go look at and see what they've discovered too. So,
oh yeah. So let's finish that thought. If you guys want to go listen to this and then come back next week with like a little more perspective, I think it'd be so fun to talk about. Yeah. So that's the whole, you have homework, you guys, you have homework to do this week.
Well, and it is exciting too, because like I said, the more I read about it, the more I can see things. And I think the more you see things, the easier it is to let your mind go with certain things. Like it's easier for me now to, if I'm not going to sleep, then I'm going to stay up and do something. Or if I'm not going to fight it, or I'm not going to stress over it anymore. So
you accept it. I hear acceptance.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I accept it. I'm like, okay, cool. Actually, it's a cool thing. I'm a protector, right? Like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what we just heard is something that was previously a defect, something that was wrong with you, becomes a very proud, like kind of a superpower. Like, I'm not a weirdo. This is literally, if anything, it kind of speaks highly to the people who had to, I would want like the strongest, most like cat-like reflex people watching for me at night. So those were your ancestors, Ruben.
That's right. So we'll go back to, first of all, how is everybody doing out there? And we appreciate you coming out to Cali Cocktail Feelings Friday. So we always have something, to talk about. Set a candle, a light. Let me see. Yes, I try to be.
You are fierce.
Yeah. But like I said, I appreciate everybody coming out here. I appreciate everybody putting out their feelings. It's hard, to type it in. I know it is, because I couldn't do it myself. So
I have to do this. My head's too itchy, you guys.
Nice. New wave. I love it. It's like it's a reverse mullet.
I know. I wasn't planning on taking my hair out, but
yeah. And like I said, we appreciate you coming every Friday night and digging in deep with us on stuff, and we'll bring it back and forth with some humor, some music. And the reason why I play music is to kind of clear the palate, come back, we can observe more and talk about more stuff in general. So
yeah, yes. I get that. I get that now. He's not just trying to be like, stop talking, Melissa. He's actually trying to give you guys a chance to digest and then shoot out something the other end.
So I'm gonna play something that's not that political, but what I do think of is people who are supporters of a certain person, who aren't wearing masks, who think that scientists are not real. And I always call it the dumbing of America, so to speak.
Do we have a name for this person?
No. He's only the most highest person in the universe, or the
oh no, right? I meant like the person that is like symbolizing.
Oh, but, it's the administration.
Ooh.
But it's the people. It's just a clip from a movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yay. So, oh my god. I love this movie. I've never thought about this movie so much.
So let's just watch. Cleanse it.
Excuse me. I think this might be Gatorade or something. I was just looking for some regular water.
Water?
Yeah.
You mean like in the toilet? What for?
No, just to drink.
Rondo the Thirst Mutilator had come to replace water virtually everywhere. Water, the basic component of all life, had been deemed a threat to Brondo's profit margin. The solution came during the budget crisis of 2330, when the Brondo Corporation simply bought the FDA and the FCC.
Sound familiar?
Enabling them to say, do, and sell anything they wanted. Joe didn't know any of this, but he did see a problem that he might actually be able to solve. With his options running out, Joe took a bold step. He would not get out of the way. This time, he would lead.
For the last time, I'm pretty sure what's killing the crops is this Brondo stuff.
The Brondo's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is that you want us to put water on the crops.
Yes.
Water. Like out the toilet?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be out of the toilet, but yeah, that's the idea.
But Brondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electrolytes.
Okay, look. The plants aren't growing, so I'm pretty sure that the Brondo's not working. Now, I'm no botanist, but I do know that if you put water on plants, they grow.
Well, I've never seen no plants grow out of no toilet.
Hey, that's good. You sure you ain't the smartest guy in the world?
Yeah. So let's go back.
Okay, look, you want to solve this problem. I want to get my pardon, so why don't we just try it, okay? And not worry about what plants crave.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know?
It's what they use to make Brondo.
Yeah, but why did they use them to make Brondo?
Because Brondo's got electrolytes.
So that was the current administration on the coronavirus, as we see
Oh
every
my gosh.
weekend. And actually watching Pence today deny it and then not answer the question, it reminds me of Idiocracy. So that's why I played that.
I feel like that movie too, it also just embodies how if we don't question things, because that can mean
Yeah.
culturally, right? Like we're not, because I think that it can be easy to say that people like us, Ruben, because I'm going to put us in the same category, who are believing the CDC, wearing masks, there is a virus. I'm saying this seriously. There's people who think, well, they're just brainwashed. They don't realize that. I feel like I'm opening a whole can of worms, but that ultimately, I'm going to stop going down that road and say it's good to ask questions. And as we're coming from like the intergenerational trauma kind of origination, the questions we're asking, I think, if anything, we're sort of just recognizing that the way that we are isn't the way that we have to be. We don't have to be on guard. Just because we were born like that, we can realize that's a story. That's always what I go back to in coaching. Or, I think that, I don't know if you meant to tie this all together, but if you did, it worked really well. Because just like we should ask questions of our administration and of the powers that be and see where the money is, we should also ask, why do we go through life the way that we do? Even just hearing them keep saying like water from the toilet, you can see just how insidious this like, oh, that's the only place water is. Like people are supposed to sleep at night. They're not supposed to stay up at night. Like that's just the way it is. That's like such a clear example of we're just told how to be,
That's right. And so sometimes, sometimes we have to question and, we have to believe in science that is a pretty basic thing. Right. And so, yeah, anyways, that's my political satire of the night. So, yeah,
I love that. I have this memory of falling asleep. It must have been around 2005. And that movie was playing and I got startled awake because all of a sudden I heard this line and someone was all, it's the dildozer. And there was like some part of that movie where there's a dildozer. That's like the only part I remember. But speaking of sleeping, it traumatized me.
What's that?
Anyway, yeah, great.
So, and then let me play this since Raquel asked real quick. I'm going to play just the beginning of the book series, so she can see what it is. And so let me play this real quick, and then we'll come back. Okay.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
It's 7 o'clock on the dot. I'm in my drop top,
I've
cruising
helped
the street.
people who struggle with the effects of inherited family trauma and don't know where to turn. I also wanted to generate awareness in the therapeutic community about the impact of epigenetics. I'd like to see this field grow. I'd like to see practices like these become standard so that clinicians have the tools they need to work with their clients who struggle with anxiety, depression, fears that previously couldn't be explained.
And I think that's a pretty good explanation for the beginning, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like going deeper, it's like, I think that like, from my perspective, that people will just go and cut the top of the plant off the weed, right? But they don't get the roots. This to me seems like you're getting the roots of the plant, at the roots of the matter too. Then trying just to cut the weeds off and going back every other, 2 years, and you get stressed out, or you learn how to, get yourself going again.
Yeah, yeah. I also think too, like something that my favorite question to ask when I'm coaching someone is, so what? Like, okay, so you figured out that your grandfather lost his mom when he was a baby. So what? And that can sound very cruel, like, so what? That's a trauma, and it's probably been passed down in my genes. And I think that once again, two things. It's really freeing to understand how we developed the things that we did and where these coping mechanisms come from. And so what? Like, how does that affect our life? And I think for me, the way I'm seeing it is, so it frees me. So there's nothing wrong with me. So I can set this down. So I can be compassionate with myself when I act in ways. For me, anger is something that feels like an inheritance, which anger is a response to something, but I wasn't taught it. My mom was a very calm person. And that's something that I don't want my daughter to have. And unless I just snap my fingers and completely change in the next couple of years, like, she's going to see me angry, because that's just something I'm working on. And I bring that up to say, two things can be true: that I can be working on it very dutifully and responsibly as a parent that wants to raise her in like an emotionally healthy household, and be compassionate with myself that I got it from somewhere. And it was helping me in some way. And that's not an excuse, right? That's not a
Yeah.
reason to raise a kid in an angry household, which I don't want to make mine like too big. It's just like, when I get mad, I get really mad and I have trouble controlling it. But I think you can be compassionate with these things and work on them. That's like the so what part of
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And how many of you out there have, anger issues, or I won't say anger issues, but you get angry really easily out there, right? And anger is like, one of those ones where it can burn, and sometimes it's good. It can't be bad all the time. Anger, you can change it into a controlled fire, or you can let it go out of control, right? So we have to be able to use these tools and learn how to, adjust to them, and grab onto them and use them as we can. Because, I know that there's a lot of stuff that I used to do when I was, well, let me ask Randy.
Anger is ugly and destructive. Been there. I think actually, so Randy, that's totally true. And Ruben, what you're saying, I think is really important, that, which maybe I just got this from what you were saying. It also serves a purpose, because to me, if anything, I had to realize that I'm allowed to be angry in some situations. Really, we're always allowed to be angry, but what does that look like? I think that's what you were just saying. What happens when you're angry? Does it turn into insults and slamming dishes and breaking them? Or does it turn into feeling out of control, which for me, that's what it is. I hate being out of control, but it doesn't necessarily mean it shouldn't be there, because sometimes, like Ruben, you and I know I had a situation this week where I was angry, and I think I was supposed to be, and acting like it's not there, I think can be just as toxic. But Randy, I agree. I think it's the expression. Maybe that's what we're talking about. The expression of anger. Only when I was raising a teenager. Oh, I'm sure that's like the epitome of testing. Sometimes I'll look at Tilly. She's just like so sweet. And of course she'll like smack me across the face with her toys and stuff. But it's like, oh my gosh, I know someday we're going to have fights. You're going to be so mad. So I can imagine, the teenage years. I have Ruben and still have to control it. Yeah, holes in walls and broken hands. And Randy, that's super honest. Thank you. I feel like
Yeah,
Randy's
thank you,
always
Randy.
good like that. I remember him. You haven't been here for a couple weeks, but coming through with like like this is how it is, and that is how anger can look, and those moments can be so hard because they can fill you with shame afterward.
And Randy, you know how strong you are just saying that and not, showing us what you're doing, because the way to fix things is you have to show it. You have to bring it out. You have to bring it into the light, and then you can deal with it after that. I mean, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but I know in my studies of Eastern philosophy, you do have to bring them out to the light. And then, there's a saying called shining the eyes in the eyes of ignorance, right? Which you bring something out and then you are seeing it. So the only way you can deal with something if you see it, right? And a lot of people, that's why a lot of people do meditation. They try to calm themselves. They see the scenario, you hold back and you change the scenario, right? In a dream, when you dream about bad dreams, I've learned this myself, you can go back. When you have a bad dream, you go back, you close your eyes, you relive that dream, and you change the outcome. And you keep doing that, you learn how to control your, because your subconscious also does that too. You're always fighting with yourself. So if you bring it out, you're able to see it. And right now, you just brought it out to all of us, which is a beautiful thing. It's a strong thing. So yes, and you need to, figure out how to control that. But right now, just bringing it out it's a controlling that you probably don't even know what you just did.
I love that you just pointed that out. I know that like in the 12 steps, the first step for any of the recovery paths is admitting that there is a problem. And really, I think that can be a negative way to say just bringing it out into the light. And it's funny, Ruben, earlier you were talking about how when you were a kid, you thought everybody had a perfect family. And
Yeah.
I think that even though we're in this culture where things are talked about more, it's still sort of this pervasive idea that we talk about stuff after it's happened. We talk about stuff in this like kind of tied up with a bow. I figured it out. It's behind me. Now I'll talk about it kind of way. And I'm not even saying that Randy hasn't figured it out, but I think that the real messiness and something that can be a really beautiful way of connecting with people is being like, no, I still struggle with this. And it is messy, and I'm a human being, and I will probably always struggle with it. And yeah.
Well, and then, like I said, that's why I think the beauty of this, studies and all the stuff that we're talking about now, and what's it called again? what's the proper word for it?
Epigenetics?
Yeah. So, but it might not even be what you're carrying is yourself. It might have been your parents' stuff, what I mean? And that's what the whole thing is about, is to look into that, because you may be carrying something that's not even yours. And all this anger, go see if someone was, there's a whole tool to go see if someone was angry in your family, and you just brought it back to you. My dad was angry. My dad had a lot of issues, and they didn't carry on to me, but they did in a lot of different ways too. So, but once I was able to look at him and see him and deal with them and bring him out, then it was easier to deal with, rather than it just being inside me all the time. Because that's what torments you, is for me, was being inside me and not dealing with it or not looking at it. So I think
Also
that,
too, like,
yeah.
I think it should be said that there's a feeling like anger or grief or anxiety. And something that I often work with people on is recognizing the feelings that we have all come from thoughts, even if they're quick and subconscious or partially conscious. And so when I say that, I mean, when I say I get angry, for me, anger is the feeling. The thought, usually, when I think about when I get really angry, it's only at Michael. Like, that is where my anger goes. And it usually is, I need to control the situation. I am being controlled. I am not being heard. You don't understand me. So I'm bringing those thoughts up because it's not about the feeling, it is, but it's about, that's where our work can be, is when we realize, oh, I get really angry when I feel controlled, or I get really sad when I feel unworthy. That story, if we do the work when we're not activated, when we're not in those situations, we can begin to understand it and bring it into the light. And then in those moments, it helps with controlling it. But I mean, I think 90% of our issues as people come from resisting this stuff, resisting the feelings, rather than just saying, okay, fuck, I feel this. Like,
Yeah.
I feel angry. I feel sad.
And
So
it's okay
Ashley
to,
said,
and it is okay to feel angry, and it is okay to feel sad. You know, it really is. I think that's something that we've been taught not to do, right? You don't have to act on it, but you can, you know, it's definitely feelings that we have to, you know, acknowledge, because they're always going to be there. You're never going to be in a total state of happiness, and, you know, and you're going to have to deal with it. And the thing is, like, it's like an exercise, right? Once you start working out your muscles, you will work them out. But you have to do that with your brain and your feelings too. That you got to learn to channel them in a different way rather than punch a wall. You know, punching a wall is, you know, yes, I get that part too, but you're only hurting yourself, right? And other, you know, so.
you guys, I want to share something really fast. Just because as we talk about this, or maybe I already changed the page. So basically, as we talk about feelings and thoughts and stories, once you become aware of your stories, like the key is to become aware of them as often as possible. And then when you bring them into the light, to, like Ruben said, feel it. We can't skip over that part. It doesn't mean we have to have breakdowns all the time, but like genuinely feel, I feel worthless. Like it feels terrible. Like allow that feeling. And anyway, what I was going to do is I'm creating a course right now, and I'm super excited about it. And also it's really hard because my stories get activated because I really care, right? Ruben, you and I talk about as creatives,
Yeah.
when you're trying to bring this thing into the world, where one part of my brain is like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. It's going to help people. It's all about how to help you have a better relationship with social media by basically figuring out what stories you have about social media. But as I'm writing it, I was really struggling, and I finally just stopped. I was like, I can't keep doing this. And I wrote down the stories that were coming out. And the stories were, nobody's going to care about this. Who do you think you are? No one's going to listen to you. You're so stupid. And these sound really shitty, right? Like, I feel like often as a life coach, I'm supposed to be like, make sure people think that you're smart and confident and you have it together. My brain tells me terrible things. But once I got them out and was like, oh, I totally know these stories. I'm worthless. I'm stupid. Nobody cares. There's no point to this anyway. Then I was able to write. What I did is I like literally wrote the opposite to each one of them. And I didn't even fully believe it. I didn't believe, oh, everyone cares about this thing that you're doing. But I was able to get perspective. Like, this isn't real and neither is this. It's just, the fact is I'm creating a course. The rest is story. Like, so I bring that up because I feel like it can apply to all of us in terms of how to deal with this stuff that can be, once again, really activating in the moment. But when we deal with it in like the off time, it's not as bad in those big moments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think that's kind of like what, you know, I love that where the conversation goes. And I love that there's different elements of everything. I think everybody's kind of tying it. It's always in the late part of the show. Everybody ties, you know, which is awesome. But yes, I agree with you. And I think
Which, by the way, I saw Ashley's comment up there, and sorry, I was like on my train.
Okay.
I try to contain my anger and find better ways to communicate, but sometimes it's really hard, a work in progress. I feel like those are super honest words. And once again, I'm grateful that we have people like Ashley and Randy and everyone that engages really honestly. Matt said, I found talking about my anxiety and depression while going through it was helpful and comforting because a lot of people opened up about their struggles, including friends and family. And knowing that I wasn't alone and that other family members, including my mom and brother, both had similar issues in the past. I wonder how long Matt's been watching. Hi, Matty the Elf.
I think it is, yeah.
Because it so ties into, Matt, I literally watch Inside Out every single night. That is my favorite movie. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's all about like the emotions in our head. And I'm such a psychology geek that I love it. But yeah, he's totally speaking to our topics. So, do you want me to read this one?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Started when I hurt my arm and I wasn't able to feel the pain due to the injury and hurt myself because I could hurt others, not trying to cause in the arm. I'm trying to, how much power to use it from. So it sounds like, I'm confused. Started when the hurt. It sounds like we're tying the anger in though with an injury. Like that definitely makes sense that like a physical injury, right? Not being able to, the freedom was compromised. And similarly, it could be like an emotional injury, your personal freedom was compromised. So it's good to kind of tie those links together. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of the podcast. And Randy, we'll send you the link for the podcast, which he was talking about a woman who was always injuring herself, and she was bleeding, and she was always injuring herself, always trying to figure out, and no one could figure out why she would kept injuring herself until they figured out that I think it was her grandma that did it too, right?
Her
It was
grandma had been drunk driving. This girl was a
yes,
cutter, and she
yes,
kept cutting to like actually kill herself. And it turned out that her grandmother had been driving drunk, hit a light pole. Grandfather had flown through the windshield, been lacerated, bled to death before he could be saved. And so then, and this was just like a very tangential reason she even told it to the therapist, but she was essentially carrying the pain of, I deserve to die, because grandma had thought that she killed her beloved in a car accident that was her fault. And so that thought, I deserve to die, carried on in the rest of her life. And so yeah, I think that that's an important kind of tie to make between the physical stuff.
And I wonder, because like you talk about pain and how much you hurt yourself just so you can't hurt anybody else. So it'd be interesting to see if, like, because it is time we have to ask your parents, like, what trauma did you go through? What did you
worst part was when my son was
there
born.
you go.
Afraid. I feel like, Randy, I feel like you're speaking to the parent's fear, afraid of hurting him, just trying to hold him. Because I feel like it's a physical fear, an emotional fear.
And that goes in with the story of, another story that he said too, about that too, about
yeah,
and it was if you could remind me which one that was.
It was a woman who, when she had her baby, she got really anxious. I think that he did he talk about that in the clip? And it had been,
let me see which one
because because yeah, he talked, maybe he didn't, but this woman had a baby, got terrified, crippled with anxiety. And it turned out that in her family line at some point, mother had accidentally lit the house on fire. Baby was on the second floor, couldn't get to baby had died. So the fear for her was, I can't keep my baby safe. Because once again, it's not just fear, it's the thought behind it. I can't keep my baby safe. I am not safe. And recognizing that something else Mark Wolin talks a lot about in the book is the language around it matters. That if there's a word that comes up a lot for you, like for me, it was safety. And it sounds like for Randy, it's safety. And
oh no, it seems like you're channeling your energy into this one specific subject too, what you just put up about your son, right? And you're hitting the wall, you're projecting all that energy and into that specific, and it should be, like I said, I think that you should look into that part myself. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that's interested, I think that for people like us, Ruben and I have done a ton of introspective, and a lot of the point of this is to help us be better humans in the world. It's not just like navel gazing, let me understand myself. It's like, how do I show up as a good person in this world? And if you're interested in that and you haven't heard of this, it could be a really great path to go down. So Randy said, I would go to tap someone on the shoulder and they hit the ground because they felt I hit him when I didn't. I think I had done that. My arm was uncontrolled. Interesting. So it almost sounds like there's like a physical, component to, my mind is going to making up lots of stories, but also to be responsible shepherds, there are sort of processes to discovering the roots of these stories. And once again, a lot of this is just us giving ourselves permission to let go of things. But Mark Wolin, he's fantastic at guiding you to the root cause. Whereas like, I think when I started reading the book, I was like, oh, I got really bad driving anxiety when I was 30 years old. Maybe someone in my family, which could be true, maybe they got in an accident or something. But as I read the book and I did the exercises, I found a completely different story just through the path laid down. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I feel like we should be getting paid for promoting this book. because we're like,
Yes.
everybody go buy it.
But you should. There's many other people that talk about it too, but I think that's like I said, one of them. And if you want to go through the more Buddhist, meditative, energy field work, then I would suggest to get Thich Nhat Hanh and look at the reasons why. Because the good thing about this other, Thich Nhat Hanh and all this stuff is that it's softer. It's softer. It's not an abrasive approach to anything. It's more like take responsibility. We all suffer. There's a way to happiness. There's a path to get to where we need to get to, but we have to do work for it. And so it's a softer way to go. And it's a little bit longer because it's like natural medicine, which takes a little bit longer than just taking a pill. But it is great because you learn a lot of little things. And when we talk about walking meditation, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're working on a car, you get fully into it. You let your mind rest, all this stuff that you can do. And there's a story of what person are you? So let's just say you're going down this, you have to cross the river, right? And the river is going fast. So you get a boat, a little, a raft, and you go across it. Now, when you get to the other side, are you the person that leaves the raft there at the end and then continue your journey, or you're the one that carries the raft to your journey, right? And so a lot of us, because of our childhoods, we take those things that are survival tools in our lives. We carry them our whole lives, and you can see people that do that. And so that kind of gave me a story of like, yeah, I need to drop this stuff off because I need to walk lighter, right? And that raft represents all your problems and all your worries, so you need to like walk lightly. And so a lot of that stuff is what we need to do, because we have tools for survival for a reason, but they become inverted after a while if we keep on to them.
That's a really, really great story, dare I say, to end with. I know we need to end soon, but I think that that's such a great way to kind of wrap up both the want to understand and the want to let go, that they're kind of both necessary. And you guys, we've talked a lot about links. So when we're done, I'll find the link to the podcast we've been talking about, and maybe Ruben can link the Thich Nhat Hanh talk, and we'll put them in the comments.
Yeah. So pinch nerves, yes.
Yeah.
And see that's a lot of stuff that we've been talking about. And I do remember Andy in our childhood too. So,
and just for anybody who wasn't here earlier, we're going to do a part 2 of this. So if you check out this stuff and come back next week, let's talk about it.
Yeah. And, we'll put up the link for it, because you should. We'll put up the podcast, and we'll put up the Thich Nhat Hanh one, and you can look at it and listen to it and come back next week with your questions or what you feel that, what you've done, right? Is that, or can you feel your feelings or feeling that you're going to do?
Whoa, what's happening? You're shorting out my brain right now.
And, and we really, really appreciate you guys coming out and telling us everything that you do, because,
totally.
And, Matt, Randy, Ashley, whoever.
Fritz, Raquella, Colleen.
Yeah.
Anyone out there that, it's so nice and reassuring to get stories that are like, for all of us to be like, oh, me too. That's the whole point. Like, I feel like that too.
Yeah. Because this is a no judgment zone. So, you put things out, and we try our best with our own experiences and in our own ways, so, to help you feel some comfort. And if we can point you away, that's great. Melissa, go to our website, do some coaching, right?
Come. By the way, I'm super excited about this course, because it's not just about social media. It's really about how to show up to life. So I'll tell you guys more about it next week. But the one I was talking about earlier, I've been trying to figure out a way to like put the things that I teach in really like a more affordable and self-coaching kind of like skill set. And I was like, oh, not everyone hates, but like a lot of people struggle with social media, because there's a lot of toxicity, there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of comparison, there's a lot of time wasted. there's a lot of like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I say too much? What if I don't say enough? So anyway, I can help you guys figure that out. And here's my cat.
Let's say this should help me a lot of few months, and I have already been through.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thank you all for being here. Love and hugs to each of you. Beautiful open heart sharing. Always, and always from you too. We appreciate that. Thanks for joining us, you guys. Yeah, I guess we started this like what, mid-March, Ruben?
Yeah. And guess what? I think we're going back to the same spot we began. So
I was gonna
there's
say
a comfort there. You know what I mean? Like, so stay safe, wear your masks. Remember that. Don't listen to the president. Wear your mask because it's science. We need to help each other out. We're Americans.
just in case. And also too,
Yes.
let's say this. It is not a political statement to wear a mask. I remember like they needed to say that. I think it was in Nashville because people think it means you're saying something about your affiliation. And it's like, no, it's just saying we think that they're probably more helpful. It's like, we don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Part 2 will be fun. Chris, good luck with those tapes. I saw that comment a while back. So yeah. All right, you guys.
So
we going out?
Melissa's got to go feed her cats because I think they're crazy.
They're going to eat me. They're going to eat me alive if I don't. That's my scary story.
Well, in the song, it's a song called "It's Gonna Be Okay" by Cody Francis. Okay, so love you guys.
Love you guys. Have a good week.
Get some rest.
Get some rest.
I'm gonna go put some stuff in the comments. I'm gonna mute myself.
Drink Brano, yes.
Lay your head on my chest.
My chest, yeah, head on my chest.
I know you've had a really bad day. But I'm right here, it's gonna be okay. The world could fall down, it's gonna be okay. The sun could go out, we're gonna be okay. If all the blue skies fade to gray, we're gonna be okay. Calm your soul. Hold my hand.
We're gonna be okay.
Let go.
Cody Francis.
I understand. I know it hurts. It wasn't fair.
Where's the chicken hat?
It's over now, so don't despair.
Good night, everybody.
The world could fall down, it's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be
The
okay.
sun could go out, we're gonna be okay. If all the blue skies fade to gray, we're gonna be okay.
This is Cali Cocktail Hour, Feelings Friday, and it is going to be okay. Please give to the blackartistfund.org.
The world could
Help
fall
out.
down, it's gonna be okay. The sun could go out, we're gonna be okay. If all the blue skies fade to gray, we're gonna be okay. The world could fall down, it's gonna be okay. The sun could go out, we're gonna be okay. If all the blue skies fade to gray,
Love you too.
we're gonna be okay.
Thank you very much. That was some great mezcal. Thank you for my mezcal producer and friend, Raul. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Peace.
people go through high streets we know. Dark and light, day and night. No one knows what the future will bring. All or nothing. Gotta mean something when you're misunderstood. Gotta mean something when you're up to no good. Misunderstood, this firewood keeps me sane. Like the teeth from my neck on my gold chain. Misunderstood, I'm no victim, no Robin Hood. Hang them teeth from my neck on my gold chain. My ghosts and my dreams gonna rescue me. Like the teeth from my neck on my gold chain.